Tonight, we will tell you a story not of pharaohs and gods, but of the ordinary person in ancient Egypt. A story that will transport you back thousands of years to a civilization both magnificent and unforgiving. Forget the golden masks and the serene pharaohs for a moment. We'll explore the daily struggle, the relentless toil, the constant dangers that defined life for the vast majority of its people. You might wonder if you could have survived even a single day in their world. Oh, and if you enjoy these stories where knowledge meets tranquility, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell icon. It helps us continue bringing you these journeys through time. All right, find a comfortable spot, let your breath deepen, and feel your body sink into the quiet comfort of your bed. Let the day's worries drift away as your mind prepares for a journey to a land shaped by the sun, the sand, and the mighty Nile. Imagine, if you will, a land bathed in perpetual sunlight, yet entirely dependent on a single, colossal river. If you had found yourself transported to ancient Egypt, a land of relentless sun, you would quickly realize your very existence, every breath, every meal, was utterly tied to a single, colossal force, the great River Nile. It was not merely a waterway, it was the pulsating vein of their world, a liquid deity dictating life's rhythm. Imagine standing on its banks, feeling the dry, hot air, then looking at this magnificent river, understanding that without it, there was simply nothing. For the Egyptians, the Nile was everything. It provided the fertile black soil, Kemet, a narrow strip along its banks, sharply contrasting the barren red Deshret desert beyond. This black land was their sustenance, home, their entire world. The river served as a highway, allowing barges laden with stone, grain, or people to glide, connecting distant towns and temples. It was their pantry, teeming with fish, and their source of fresh water, though often murky. The Nile's most crucial power was its annual inundation, the Akhet, or flood season, from July to October. This was no destructive deluge, but a gentle, life-giving swell. Each year, waters rose, overflowing banks, spreading across parched fields, depositing rich, dark silt. This nutrient-rich mud from Ethiopia's highlands formed their agriculture's foundation. It replenished soil, ensuring bountiful wheat and barley harvests, their diet's staples. Without this predictable flood, land remained a sterile wasteland, incapable of supporting a large population. Their entire calendar, society structure, was built around 3 seasons: Akhet, inundation; Pere, growing; Shemu, harvest. Every farmer, official pharaoh, understood prosperity, survival, depended on this annual miracle. You would watch river levels with religious fervor, understanding its rise meant life, its retreat meant work, its absence meant despair. Yet, this benevolent force held terrifying, destructive potential. The Nile was unpredictable, a fickle god. A flood too high meant catastrophe. Water surged beyond fields, tearing down mud brick homes, drowning livestock, washing away grain stores. Imagine the terror, the desperate scramble to higher ground, losing everything, swept away by waters that usually sustained you. The stench of decay, ruined homes, desperate cries of families losing livelihoods, grim realities of excessive flood. It wasn't just physical destruction, it was a blow to the spirit, a test of faith in their divine river. Conversely, a flood too low was equally devastating. This meant drought, a slow, agonizing death for land and people. Silt wouldn't reach fields, leaving soil infertile, cracked. Crops would wither, livestock starve, granaries empty. Famine would stalk the land, a silent, creeping horror. You would witness slow emaciation, desperate searches for scraps, hollow eyes of children, increasing burials. Social order strained, desperation led to unrest, testing the pharaoh's authority as people cried for non-existent food. The Nile, in its wrath or scarcity, held power to unravel their entire civilization. Life in ancient Egypt was a constant, precarious dance with this river. Every decision, from village placement to crop planting, was Nile-minded. Priests meticulously recorded levels at nilometers, stone gauges, to predict flood intensity. Rituals and offerings were made constantly to Hapi, god of inundation, and Osiris, god of fertility and afterlife, whose cycle mirrored the river's ebb and flow. You would live with this ever-present awareness, the river's murmur a constant backdrop, a comforting lullaby or terrifying roar. Your consciousness would be shaped by its presence, your future determined by its waters. The Nile was not just a river, it was destiny, life, and the ever-present shadow of death, all rolled into one magnificent, terrifying entity. You would learn to respect it, to fear it, and to pray to it with every fiber of your being, for your survival depended on its whim. But the Nile, for all its generosity, did not sow the seeds or raise the stones itself. It merely provided the canvas upon which the ancient Egyptians painted their lives through relentless, arduous labor. Your days, had you lived then, would have been defined by the rhythm of the river and the unceasing demands of the land. The agricultural year was divided into 3 distinct seasons, each dictating a different form of toil. First came Akhet, the season of inundation, when the Nile's floodwaters covered the fields, depositing rich, fertile silt. During this time, direct farming was impossible, but it was not a period of idleness. Instead, this was often when the massive public works projects, like the Great Pyramids and grand temples, drew heavily on the population. Imagine the immense effort required, for instance, to construct such monumental structures. These were not built by slaves in the modern sense, but by organized teams of skilled craftsmen, quarrymen, and a vast workforce of conscripted peasants, fulfilling their civic duty during the months when their fields were submerged. You would have joined thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, of your fellow citizens in the quarries, chipping away at vast blocks of limestone, the most common building material, or the harder, more challenging granite and sandstone, destined for the pharaoh's eternal resting place or the god's earthly abodes. The tools at your disposal were simple, yet effective for the time. Copper chisels, stone hammers, and wooden levers were the primary instruments used to extract these colossal stones. Once quarried, the blocks, weighing many tons, had to be transported. There were no wheeled vehicles for such heavy loads, nor iron tools in the early periods to make the work easier. Instead, the Egyptians relied on sheer human strength and ingenuity. You would have witnessed, or participated in, the laborious task of dragging these immense stones across the desert on wooden sledges, often lubricated with water or silt to reduce friction. Ramps made of earth and rubble were constructed to raise the blocks, layer by painstaking layer, up the rising structures. The air would have been thick with dust, the sun relentless, and the only sound the rhythmic chant of workers, the creak of ropes, and the dull thud of stone against stone. Accidents were common, injuries frequent, and sheer exhaustion a constant companion. Yet, the work was done with remarkable precision, a testament to the organizational prowess and the deep spiritual belief that fueled these endeavors. Each stone laid was not just a block of rock. It was an offering, a prayer, a step closer to eternal life for the pharaoh, and by extension, for the entire land. Following Akhet came Pere, the season of growing. As the floodwaters receded, leaving behind the nutrient-rich black soil, your focus would have shifted entirely to agriculture. This was a race against time, as the land needed to be prepared quickly before it dried out. You would have used simple wooden plows, often pulled by oxen, to break up the soil, or perhaps just a heavy hoe to turn the earth by hand. Sowing seeds, primarily wheat and barley, the staples of the Egyptian diet, was done by scattering them over the freshly tilled ground. Then came the critical task of irrigation. While the Nile provided the initial flood, maintaining moisture throughout the growing season required constant effort. You would have spent countless hours in the fields, digging and maintaining an intricate network of canals and ditches to bring water from the river or from reservoirs to your crops. For smaller, higher plots, the shaduf, a simple yet ingenious lever system with a bucket on one end and a counterweight on the other, allowed you to manually lift water from the Nile or a canal to irrigate your thirsty plants, a repetitive, back-breaking motion performed under the relentless Egyptian sun. Finally, Shemu, the harvest season, arrived. This was a period of intense activity, as the ripened crops had to be gathered swiftly before they spoiled or were lost to pests. You would have joined your family and neighbors in the fields, wielding a simple sickle to cut the stalks of grain by hand. The harvested grain was then threshed, often by animals trampling it on a hard surface to separate the edible kernels from the husks. Winnowing, tossing the grain into the air so the wind could blow away the lighter chaff, was the final step before storage. Every grain was precious, carefully collected and stored in granaries, ensuring survival until the next harvest. This cycle of labor, from the rising of the Nile to the collection of the final grain, was not merely a means of sustenance. It was the very fabric of existence, a never-ending testament to human resilience and the profound connection between the people and their life-giving river. Ancient Egyptian life, while built on monumental achievements, was a constant battle against unseen enemies, disease, and illness. The very river that sustained their civilization, the mighty Nile, also presented an unending source of health threats. Its annual inundation, though bringing fertile soil, left behind stagnant pools where mosquitoes, carriers of malaria, bred in vast numbers. The water itself, essential for drinking and irrigation, teemed with parasites like those causing schistosomiasis, a debilitating illness that slowly sapped strength and vitality from millions. Imagine the chronic internal pain, the burning sensation, and the pervasive fatigue that would become a familiar companion for many from childhood, gradually weakening the body over a lifetime. Beyond the water, the environment itself was a hostile force. The omnipresent desert sand carried by winds infiltrated everything, including their food. Grinding grain with stone inevitably mixed abrasive particles into the flour, leading to severe dental wear and abscesses, a common and agonizing affliction. Without modern dentistry, these painful infections often proved fatal, as they could spread throughout the body. Flies, attracted by poor sanitation and abundant refuse, were relentless vectors for eye infections like trachoma, often causing blindness, and various forms of dysentery, which could rapidly dehydrate and kill, especially the young and the old. The dust, the oppressive heat, the close living conditions, and the complete lack of understanding about germ theory meant that even a common cold could quickly escalate into life-threatening pneumonia. Daily life was a minefield of potential ailments. You would have witnessed frequent outbreaks of illness, entire families laid low by fever or coughing fits. Infant mortality rates were tragically high. Many children never reached adulthood, succumbing to childhood diseases that are easily preventable today. Life expectancy was considerably shorter than it is now, a stark reminder of life's fragile balance. Despite these overwhelming challenges, ancient Egyptian medicine was remarkably advanced for its time, though still limited by contemporary knowledge. Physicians, known as saniploid, were highly respected members of society, often specializing in particular areas, such as dentistry or ophthalmology. Their knowledge was passed down through generations, codified in papyri, like the Ebers Papyrus or the Edwin Smith Papyrus, which cataloged hundreds of diseases, symptoms, and treatments. These ancient texts reveal a pragmatic approach, combining empirical observation with a deep understanding of anatomy, primarily gained through the process of mummification. You might consult a physician for a broken bone, and he would set it carefully with splints made of wood and linen, or for a wound, which he would clean thoroughly and dress with honey, a natural antiseptic, and other herbal remedies. However, their understanding of the true causes of disease was rudimentary. They attributed illness not only to natural causes, but also to malevolent spirits, curses, or divine displeasure. This meant medical treatment often intertwined deeply with religious ritual. A physician might prescribe a herbal poultice, while a priest simultaneously recited incantations or offered fervent prayers to specific deities, like Sekhmet, the goddess of healing and plague, or Thoth, the god of knowledge and medicine. You might find yourself wearing an amulet, an object believed to ward off evil or bring good fortune, or participating in a purification ritual, hoping to appease an angry god or expel a harmful spirit from your body. For severe internal ailments, their options were far more limited. While they performed some surgical procedures, such as trepanation, drilling holes in the skull, or the setting of fractures, internal surgery was rare and highly risky. Without antibiotics, even a minor infection could become fatal. The constant presence of parasitic worms, spread through contaminated water and food, weakened the population chronically, making them more susceptible to other illnesses. You would have grown accustomed to the sight of people suffering from swollen limbs, distended bellies, or chronic fatigue, the silent signs of these pervasive infections. The sheer unsanitary conditions exacerbated every health challenge. Open sewers, waste disposal directly into the Nile or onto the streets, and the close proximity of humans and animals provided fertile ground for pathogens. Personal hygiene, while practiced, was not enough to counteract these systemic issues. You might wash daily, but the water itself could be contaminated. Your food, though carefully prepared, could be spoiled by pests or carry invisible threats. Every breath you took, despite these severe health challenges, their medical practices were remarkably advanced for the era, blending empirical treatments with spiritual rituals. Yet, the fundamental struggle for survival began with the most basic needs: food and water. Your daily sustenance in ancient Egypt would have been simple, even monotonous, primarily consisting of a coarse bread made from emmer wheat and a thick, nutritious beer. This beer, less potent than modern alcohol, functioned as a liquid food rich in calories and nutrients brewed from barley. These staples were supplemented by vegetables like onions, garlic, leeks, lettuce, and lentils, all grown in the fertile silt left by the Nile's annual inundation. Fruits such as dates, figs, and grapes provided sweetness. Meat was a luxury, typically for the wealthy or special occasions, though poultry like geese and ducks were raised, and fish from the river was a common protein source for many, caught in nets or with hooks. The diet, while basic, provided the energy for the demanding physical labor defining much of Egyptian life. The challenge, however, was not merely acquiring food, but preserving it in a hot, humid climate where spoilage was a constant and relentless enemy. Without refrigeration, Egyptians relied on age-old methods to prevent their vital provisions from rotting. Grains were stored in massive, conical granaries, often of mud brick, meticulously sealed against moisture and the ever-present threat of rodents and insects. Despite these efforts, infestation could occur, leading to significant losses and contaminated food. Fish and fowl were rigorously dried in the intense sun, sometimes salted, their desiccated forms a common sight, ensuring protein through leaner seasons. Dates and figs were likewise dried, extending their shelf life. Bread, baked fresh daily, would quickly harden, but could be rehydrated or crumbled into stews. Beer, brewed constantly, its fermentation a natural preservative, was a far safer source of hydration than much of the available water. The smell of baking bread and brewing beer would have been ever present, a comforting aroma amidst the daily grind. And it was the water itself that presented perhaps the greatest and most insidious threat, a silent killer lurking in the very source of life. The Nile, Egypt's lifeblood, was paradoxically also a source of constant, unseen peril. Its vast waters, essential for irrigation and drinking, teemed with dangers. You would have drawn water directly from the river or from the intricate network of canals and wells fed by its floods. And this seemingly pure source carried relentless risks. Parasitic worms, notably those causing schistosomiasis, were endemic. These creatures could enter your body through the skin during bathing, washing clothes, or wading into the river. Once inside, they would slowly debilitate their hosts, leading to chronic fatigue, organ damage, and eventually death. Bacterial infections like dysentery and cholera were rampant, spread through contaminated water and poorly handled food. The very act of quenching your thirst or preparing a meal could introduce deadly disease, a silent, invisible enemy in the most vital resource. Poor storage of provisions further exacerbated these risks. Grains, if not properly dried and ventilated, could develop molds that produced harmful mycotoxins, leading to severe illness. Insects and rodents were constant companions in any ancient dwelling, contaminating food supplies and spreading pathogens. Even simple food preparation carried risks. Inadequate cooking or unhygienic practices could turn a meal into a source of illness. You lived in a world where every bite and every sip was a gamble, where the line between sustenance and sickness was thin, often blurred, and frequently crossed. The daily struggle for clean food and safe water was a relentless, quiet battle, fought with careful observation, ancient knowledge, and constant vigilance against unseen threats. This fundamental vulnerability shaped daily routines, influencing granary construction, ubiquitous beer brewing, and the very understanding of life and death. It reinforced the profound connection between the individual, the fertile land, and the Nile's bounty. Your existence was a testament to resilience, a constant dance on the edge of scarcity and disease, a reminder that even the most advanced civilization was bound by the unyielding realities of its environment, where survival was perpetually earned through unceasing labor and cautious living. Amidst the constant struggle for survival, amidst the monumental labors and the pervasive threats of disease, there existed another formidable force that shaped every breath you took in ancient Egypt, the unyielding hand of the law. It was not merely a set of rules, but the very embodiment of cosmic order known as Ma'at, a divine principle permeating all existence. Ma'at represented truth, justice, balance, and cosmic harmony, the invisible threads holding the universe together. To live in accordance with Ma'at was to ensure societal stability, divine favor, and your peaceful passage into the afterlife. To transgress it was to invite chaos for yourself and the entire land. This profound concept meant justice was a sacred duty, reflecting the very will of the gods. The pharaoh, revered as a living god, was the supreme embodiment of Ma'at, the ultimate lawgiver whose word was absolute. His decrees, passed down through a vast bureaucracy of scribes and officials, formed the legal system's very backbone. From grandest pronouncements to minute regulations, his authority was unquestionable. Beneath him, a hierarchy of judges and administrators, overseen by the powerful vizier, the pharaoh's chief minister and supreme judge, ensured his divine will was carried out across the land, from bustling Memphis to remote Aswan. You would know that every official, soldier, and farmer lived under this towering shadow of authority, a constant reminder of your predetermined place in the grand design. Even simple disputes, perhaps over an irrigation ditch or a boundary stone, would be brought before local courts, often presided over by village elders or trusted scribes. For more serious matters like a contested inheritance or a grave accusation, cases would ascend to higher tribunals. Testimony was paramount, and witnesses swore solemn oaths by the gods, knowing perjury was a grave offense, an act of deceit against both man and deity, punishable by severe flogging or even tongue removal. Imagine the profound weight of your words in such a setting, the chilling fear of false witness hanging in the air. The punishments for transgression were often swift, public, and brutal, designed not just to correct, but to deter through fear. For minor offenses, a public flogging was common, the sharp sting of the whip against your bare back serving as a vivid, painful lesson. Repeated theft, a crime against community stability, could lead to the mutilation of a hand or an ear, a permanent visible mark of your disgrace, leaving you forever branded and ostracized. The very thought of losing a limb, your very means of labor and sustenance, would send a shiver down your spine, a chilling reminder of the consequences of desperation or greed. But no crime was considered more heinous, more blasphemous than grave robbing. To disturb the eternal rest of the deceased, to desecrate beyond the structured world of human laws and the pharaoh's decree, lay an older, more primal authority, nature itself. Living along the narrow ribbon of the Nile, you were constantly reminded that the fertile land was merely a thin buffer between civilization and the untamed wild. The very river that sustained life also harbored its own formidable dangers, demanding profound and constant respect. You would learn quickly to navigate its waters, not just for its power to flood, but for the silent, lurking creatures beneath its surface. The Nile crocodile, a creature of ancient lineage and terrifying efficiency, was an ever-present threat. Its silent, submerged approach made every trip to the riverbank, every dip of a bucket for water, a moment of acute vulnerability. The glint of an eye or a barely perceptible ripple on the water's surface could signal impending disaster. These apex predators decimated livestock, snatching cattle, goats, and even dogs, dragging them into the murky depths, leaving behind only ripples and a chilling sense of fear. Their presence forced constant, almost instinctive vigilance, especially for children who might play too close to the water's edge or for fishermen casting nets from fragile papyrus skiffs, their small crafts easily overturned. The river, your lifeline, was also a watery graveyard. Equally formidable, though less overtly aggressive and less provoked, were the hippopotamuses. These massive territorial beasts, deceptively clumsy on land, were agile and astonishingly powerful in the water. A charging hippopotamus could effortlessly capsize a small boat or larger ferry, leaving occupants struggling in crocodile-infested waters, often with severe injuries from the immense force of the impact. Their powerful jaws, capable of crushing bone, were a stark, visceral reminder that the Nile was not solely for human dominion. Even on land, at night, when they grazed in cultivated fields, their unpredictable temperament posed a deadly threat to anyone who stumbled upon them unaware. The sound of their heavy footsteps or a sudden snort could send a jolt of terror through you. And then there were smaller, but no less deadly creatures thriving in the warmth and moisture of the Nile Valley, always a hidden menace. Snakes, many lethally venomous, were a common unsettling sight in grain fields, among dry reeds, in dusty storage sheds, and even inside mud brick homes, seeking cool, dark corners. You would quickly learn to recognize the telltale rustle in the reeds, the subtle shift in the sand, or the distinctive pattern on a wall that indicated their presence. A bite from an asp or a cobra could mean swift, agonizing death, with little hope of cure beyond prayer and rudimentary herbal remedies, often ineffective. Scorpions, too, were ubiquitous, their segmented bodies and stinging tails a constant threat, hiding under loose stones, in cracks in ancient walls, or beneath bundles of linen and straw. Their stings, while rarely fatal for a healthy adult, inflicted excruciating burning pain that could incapacitate a worker for days, a serious setback in a society where every pair of hands was vital. The simple act of putting on sandals or reaching into a dark corner could instantly transform into a perilous gamble. Beyond the life-giving river, stretching endlessly on either side, lay the vast, featureless, and utterly unforgiving expanse of the desert, the Red Land, as the ancient Egyptians called it, a stark, terrifying contrast to the black land of the fertile Nile Valley. The desert was not just empty space, it was a dynamic, hostile force designed to kill the unprepared. The sun, a benevolent deity in the valley, became a merciless, blinding tormentor here, its relentless rays beaten down with an intensity that swiftly led to severe dehydration and debilitating heat stroke, turning the vast, shimmering landscape into a cruel mirage of false hope and tormenting thirst. Traveling through the desert, even for short distances, required meticulous planning, abundant precious water, and an intimate inherited knowledge of the few scattered oases and ancient trade routes. Sandstorms or Khamsin winds could arise suddenly, without warning, transforming the clear sky into a swirling, suffocating maelstrom of red dust. These terrifying storms could rage for days, burying trails, disorienting travelers, and filling lungs with choking grit. To be caught without sturdy shelter meant facing the very real possibility of being lost, buried alive, or simply overcome by the relentless elements, succumbing to suffocation or exposure. The wind howled with a predatory sound, sand scoured the skin, and visibility dropped to zero, transforming the familiar world into a terrifying, chaotic void where every breath was a struggle. The desert also harbored its own array of formidable predators, though these were less a direct daily threat to settled village life and more a danger to those who ventured beyond cultivated lands or to isolated homesteads. Jackals, hyenas, and even the occasional lion, though rarer in later periods, roamed the desolate fringes, drawn by the scent of carrion or the possibility of an unguarded flock. Their chilling cries echoing in the night served as a constant, stark reminder that human dominion ended abruptly at the edge of the green, cultivated land. The desert was a place of profound isolation, where a single misstep could lead to a slow, agonizing demise, far from the comforting sounds of village life and the possibility of human aid. Life in ancient Egypt, therefore, was not merely a struggle against hunger, the pharaoh's demands, or human laws. It was a ceaseless daily negotiation with a powerful, indifferent, and often deadly natural world. Every dawn presented a new challenge, a new inherent risk, a new reminder of your fragile, vulnerable place in the grand, intricate scheme of creation. You learn to live with a constant, deep-seated undercurrent of awareness, your senses always acutely alert, your respect for the raw, untamed environment deeply ingrained. This constant proximity to raw, untamed nature profoundly shaped not only your physical existence, but also your spiritual worldview, fostering a deep sense of humility and complete dependence on the delicate, often precarious balance of the cosmos. The gods, you understood instinctively, were not just distant figures in temples or abstract concepts. They were palpably present in the powerful river, in the scorching sun, in the very sand that constantly threatened to reclaim the hard-won land. This deep spiritual connection, fostered by the ceaseless negotiation with an indifferent, often deadly world, extended naturally to the omnipresent gods, who were not distant entities, but intimate forces, woven into the fabric of every Egyptian's existence. You would have lived your days under the watchful eyes of a vast pantheon, hundreds of deities, each with dominion over specific aspects of the world and human life. These gods dictated the rhythms of your existence, from the rising of the sun to the ebb and flow of the Nile, shaping your fears, hopes, and every daily decision. Their favor was sought, their wrath feared, and their presence acknowledged in every breath. Ra, the majestic sun god, for example, dictated the very rhythm of your day. His journey across the sky from dawn to dusk brought warmth, light, and life, making the fertile land thrive and the crops grow. His nightly descent into the underworld was a period of apprehension, a fear that he might not return, plunging the world into eternal darkness. Your gratitude for his rise each morning would have been profound, a silent prayer of thanks for continued existence and the promise of another day. Similarly, Osiris, the revered god of the underworld and rebirth, held sway over the Nile's annual inundation, the very source of your sustenance. His story of death and resurrection mirrored the cycle of the crops, from the planting of seeds in the rich black silt to the eventual harvest, reinforcing the belief in life after death and the cyclical nature of existence. You would have seen his hand in every fertile field and every sprouting seed, understanding that his benevolent power ensured the continuation of life. Isis, his devoted consort, the goddess of magic, healing, and motherhood, would have been invoked for protection, particularly during childbirth or when a loved one fell ill. Her nurturing presence offered comfort and hope in times of vulnerability. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of knowledge, writing, and wisdom, was honored by scribes and scholars, guiding their hands as they meticulously recorded the annals of history and the daily accounts of the granaries. Horus, the falcon-headed sky god, was embodied by the pharaoh himself, serving as the living link between the divine and the mortal realms, ensuring cosmic order and protection for the entire land. The concept of Ma'at, representing truth, justice, balance, and cosmic order, was paramount. It was not merely a legal code, but a divine principle that governed the entire universe, from the celestial bodies to the smallest grains of sand. Every action, every thought, every word was judged against Ma'at. To live in accordance with it was to ensure prosperity, not only for yourself, but for the entire land, ensuring the Nile's floods were bountiful and the harvest rich. To deviate from it invited chaos, famine, plague, or invasion, inviting divine retribution that could affect the entire community. This deep-seated belief meant that your moral code was intrinsically linked to the will of the gods, guiding your interactions with others and your place within society. Rituals were not optional ceremonies, but vital acts of maintenance, ensuring the gods remained benevolent and Ma'at was upheld. Priests, not preachers in the modern sense, served as meticulous caretakers of the divine, meticulously performing daily offerings in the temples, presenting food, drink, and burning incense to the statues of the gods, believed to be living embodiments of the deities themselves. Though you, as an ordinary person, would not enter the inner sanctum of the great temples, those sacred, cool stone chambers shrouded in mystery, your home would likely have a small shrine, perhaps a painted image of Bes, the protector of households, or Taweret, the goddess of childbirth, where you would offer personal prayers and small tokens of devotion. The faint scent of burning incense would often drift through the air during these private moments of communion. Fear of divine displeasure was a constant, tangible presence. A sudden drought, an unexpected plague sweeping through your village, or the failure of the harvest could all be attributed to an angered deity demanding immediate appeasement. This fear drove the meticulous adherence to rituals and the constant offerings. Magic and superstition were intertwined with religion, providing a sense of control over an unpredictable world. Amulets, small charms worn around the neck or wrist, were commonplace, believed to offer protection from evil spirits, venomous bites, or to bring good fortune. You might carry a scarab beetle, symbolizing rebirth, or the Eye of Horus, a potent symbol of protection and royal power. Spells and charms, often inscribed on papyrus or recited by local healers, were used for everything from curing illnesses to ensuring a safe journey. Oracles and divination, often conducted at temples by priests interpreting omens or dreams, provided guidance from the gods on crucial decisions, whether personal or concerning the fate of the nation. The pharaoh, as the living Horus, served as the ultimate divine mediator, the bridge between gods and humans. His role as chief priest was paramount. His responsibility to maintain Ma'at through elaborate rituals and the construction of grand temples. His actions, from leading armies to overseeing the harvest, were believed to directly impact the god's favor. Festivals, vibrant public celebrations held throughout the year, reinforced community and faith, bringing people together in joyous processions, music, and offerings, celebrating the cycles of the gods and the land. These occasions were not merely entertainment, but vital acts of collective worship, strengthening the bonds between the people and their divine protectors. Even death, as significant as it was profoundly shaped by the gods' roles in judgment and the journey to the afterlife, a path you hope to navigate successfully through careful preparation and divine grace. The omnipresent gaze of the gods, which defined every breath and every ritual, also extended its shadow over the grim reality of conflict. For you, living in ancient Egypt, the call to arms was not a matter of choice, but a stark, often terrifying obligation. While the priests sought divine favor through intricate ceremonies, the pharaoh, seen as a living god, also demanded the ultimate service, your very life on the battlefield. The vast fertile lands of Kemet, as the Egyptians called their country, were protected not just by the Nile's embrace, but by the spears and shields of its people. Military service was a compulsory duty, a heavy burden that could fall upon almost any able-bodied man. Farmers, whose hands were calloused from tilling the rich black soil, could find themselves trading their hoes for spears. Artisans, accustomed to the delicate work of crafting jewelry or carving reliefs, might suddenly be forced to march under the desert sun. The state, embodied by the pharaoh, held absolute authority over your fate, and if the summons came, there was no refusing. This was not a professional army in the modern sense, but a levy drawn from the populace, a necessary sacrifice to maintain the stability and prosperity of the two lands, Upper and Lower Egypt. The reasons for war were varied, yet always presented as vital for the kingdom's survival. Sometimes it was about defending the established borders from encroaching nomadic tribes or ambitious foreign powers. At other times, the pharaoh sought to expand Egypt's influence, extending its reach into lands like Nubia to the south for its gold and resources, or into the Levant to the northeast to control vital trade routes and secure strategic territories. Suppressing internal rebellions, though less common, also necessitated military action. The pharaoh, as the protector of Ma'at, cosmic order and justice, was obligated to crush any force that threatened the balance of the world, whether from within or without. When the call came, training was rudimentary but effective. You would learn to march in formation, to hold a shield steady against a volley of arrows, and to wield a simple bronze-tipped spear or a curved khopesh sword. The equipment was basic: a wooden shield covered in hide, a spear or bow, perhaps a simple leather or quilted linen tunic for protection. There were no elaborate drills for individual prowess. The emphasis was on cohesion, on moving as a single, disciplined unit. The hot sun beat down on the parade ground, the dust rising with every synchronized step as you practiced the movements that might someday save your life or end another's. Life as a soldier was harsh, a stark contrast to the rhythms of agricultural life. Long, arduous marches were common, often spanning days or weeks across the unforgiving desert, your feet aching on the rocky ground. Nights were spent under the vast, star-filled sky, with only a thin blanket for warmth against the cool desert air. Rations were simple: dried bread, lentils, perhaps some dried fish or dates, always carefully portioned. Yet the greatest threat often came not from the enemy's blade, but from unseen forces. Dysentery, malaria, and other diseases could decimate an army faster than any battle, spreading rapidly through crowded camps with limited sanitation and contaminated water sources. The constant proximity to illness, the relentless physical exertion, and the ever-present danger slowly chipped away at both body and spirit. The brutality of ancient warfare was undeniable. Combat was a terrifying, chaotic affair, fought at close quarters where the clash of bronze on wood, the shouts of men, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. There was no concept of surgical strikes or precise targeting. It was a brutal struggle for survival. Wounds, if not immediately fatal, often festered, leading to infection and slow, agonizing deaths. Medical care on the battlefield was almost non-existent. If you fell, your fate was sealed. The enemy, if victorious, might show no mercy, taking captives as slaves or executing them on the spot. Even if you survived the initial engagement, the psychological toll of witnessing such carnage, of killing or seeing your comrades fall, would remain with you, a silent scar. Logistics, the immense task of supplying an army in the field, was a testament to Egyptian organization. Water was paramount, carried in large jars or drawn from wells along the route. Food caravans followed the troops, ensuring that basic sustenance reached the front lines. Repairs for damaged equipment, replacement weapons, and even simple medical supplies had to be transported across vast distances. This required an intricate network of scribes, overseers, and laborers, all working in concert to keep the fighting machine functioning. Failure in logistics could doom an entire campaign, leaving soldiers hungry, thirsty, and vulnerable. The chance of returning home was never guaranteed. Many did not, their bones left to bleach under foreign suns. Those who did return often bore the physical scars of battle, missing limbs, deep gashes, or chronic pain. Yet, success in war could bring its own rewards. Victorious soldiers might be granted plots of land, a share of the spoils of war, livestock, precious metals, or even slaves. Promotion within the ranks could elevate a common man to a position of respect and influence. But these potential gains always came at the immense cost of personal risk, the ever-present possibility of death, or worse, capture and enslavement in a foreign land. The constant underlying fear of conscription permeated society. Every family knew that a son, a brother, or a husband could be called away at any moment, disrupting their livelihood and leaving loved ones vulnerable. The sudden absence of a primary provider could plunge a household into destitution. The emotional impact was profound, a quiet anxiety that underscored daily life. You lived with the knowledge that your peaceful existence, your work in the fields, your family life, could be shattered by the pharaoh's decree, sending you into a world of violence and uncertainty. It was a stark reminder that despite the gods' benevolence, human survival often depended on the brutal realities of power and conflict. And so, the constant shadow of death, whether from war, disease, or the unforgiving land itself, was not an end, but a doorway in ancient Egypt. For you, life was but a preparation for eternity, a journey through this world to secure passage to the next. This profound belief permeated every aspect of existence, shaping not just your daily rituals, but your very understanding of your purpose. From the moment of birth, your destiny was entwined with the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that after death, a person's spirit embarked on a perilous journey through the Duat, the underworld. This realm, governed by Osiris, the god of the dead, was filled with trials and challenges, guarded by fearsome deities and monstrous entities. To navigate it successfully, you needed not only a pure heart, but also the correct knowledge and physical preservation. This is where the elaborate practices of mummification became paramount. It was not merely a gruesome ritual, but a sacred necessity, believed to preserve the body as a vessel for the Ka and Ba. The Ka, your life force or spiritual double, needed a physical anchor to return to, while the Ba, your personality and soul, could travel freely between the living and dead worlds. Without a preserved body, both aspects of your spirit would be lost forever, condemning you to non-existence. The process of mummification itself was long and meticulous, lasting up to 70 days. It began with the extraction of internal organs, carefully preserved in canopic jars, each dedicated to a specific deity. The brain, considered unimportant, was often removed through the nostrils. The body was then dried using natron, a natural salt, to prevent decay. After 40 days, the body was cleaned, anointed with oils and resins, and meticulously wrapped in layers upon layers of linen bandages, often adorned with amulets for protection. This entire procedure, performed by specialized priests, was incredibly costly, meaning that only the wealthiest could afford the full, elaborate treatment. For the majority, mummification was simpler, often just a drying process, or sometimes even just burial in the dry desert sand, which naturally preserved the body. Your final judgment awaited you in the Hall of Two Truths, where your heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and cosmic order. This was the ultimate test of your life's morality. If your heart was lighter than the feather, meaning you had lived a virtuous life, free from sin and injustice, you would be granted eternal bliss in the field of reeds, a paradise mirroring the fertile Nile Valley. But if your heart was heavy with wrongdoing, it would be devoured by Ammit, the devourer of the dead, a terrifying beast with the head of a crocodile, the body of a lion, and the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. This meant eternal damnation, a second death, and the ultimate obliteration of your existence. This belief in judgment profoundly influenced daily life. Every action, every word, every thought carried weight, for it would be recorded and assessed in the afterlife. You were expected to live by Ma'at's principles: truth, justice, balance, and order. This translated into a moral code that emphasized honesty, respect for elders, care for family, and adherence to societal norm. Building and maintaining a proper tomb was also a lifelong endeavor, reflecting your status and your commitment to a successful afterlife. Even the poorest strove to have some form of burial, perhaps just a simple grave with a few offerings, for fear of being forgotten and denied passage. Tombs were not just burial places, but eternal homes filled with offerings, spells, and even miniature models of daily life. Servants, boats, and food, all designed to ensure a comfortable existence in the next world. The walls of your tomb would be adorned with scenes depicting your life, your virtues, and the journey to the afterlife, acting as a guide and a testament to your worthiness. The pharaoh, as the divine intermediary between gods and humans, held the most elaborate preparations. His pyramid or rock-cut tomb was a monumental undertaking, designed to ensure his eternal reign and the continued prosperity of Egypt. His journey through the Duat was seen as crucial for the sun god Ra's daily rebirth, ensuring the cosmic cycle continued. The very construction of these tombs, requiring immense labor and resources, underscored the societal priority placed on the afterlife. Your entire society was structured around this ultimate goal: to live a life worthy of eternal peace and to ensure that the journey there was as smooth as possible. The fear of non-existence, of being forgotten, was a powerful motivator, driving the meticulous care given to the dead and the unwavering belief in a vibrant world beyond the veil. Your life in ancient Egypt, therefore, was a constant dance with mortality, where every breath was a step towards an eternity you hope to embrace.